It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. Milton continues its barreling towards Florida. Kamala continues her media tour, and a win for religious liberty. Next on the AM Update. Hurricane Milton barreled across the Gulf of Mexico's warm waters on Tuesday, decreasing in intensity from a Category 5 to Category 4 storm early in the day before quickly coming back up near the edge or the line between a Category 4 and Category 5 storm. Mass evacuations clogged highways in Florida as people prepared for a potentially historic storm to make landfall as early as Wednesday night. Some communities, like those in and around the Tampa Bay area, are still reeling from the impacts of Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. I told you yesterday about that narrative that was being floated around that Ron DeSantis refused a phone call from Kamala Harris. That would be Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, she responded saying that it was irresponsible and selfish for DeSantis to refuse her call. Here is Ron DeSantis on Fox yesterday, completely dispelling that notion and offering an absolutely brutal takedown of Vice President Kamala.
Well, I think she should look in the mirror. We've been on an emergency footing for 2 weeks straight, round the clock, 24/7. We've been working, my office, our Division of Emergency Management, helping people prepare for Hurricane Helene, helping effectuate rescues of people after Hurricane Helene, helping people pick up the pieces of their lives after Helene, and then have to also turn around and prepare for major impacts and maybe even more impacts from Hurricane Milton, be able to have rescue personnel ready to help people, and then, of course, help with the power restoration, all these things to do. So that's been my sole focus. My focus has not been on dealing with Kamala Harris. I saw the news report. I didn't know she tried to contact me. But I'd also say it's not about you, Kamala. Right. It's about the people of Florida. My focus is exactly where it should be. And I can tell you this. I've worked on these hurricanes under both President Trump and President Biden. Neither of them ever tried to politicize it. She has never called on any of the storms we've had since she's been vice president until apparently now. Why all of a sudden is she trying to parachute in and inject herself when she's never shown any interest in the past? We know it's because of politics. We know it's because of her campaign. I have zero time to entertain these political games. We're going to continue to do what we need to do to prepare and respond to what may be one of the most damaging storms in the history of the United States. So she says focusing on protecting your people is selfish. I think she ought to look in the mirror.
Again, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Fox News completely dispelling the notion that he's refusing to talk to Kamala Harris for political reasons. Absolutely brutal takedown. And you know who else has Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' back? That would be Joe Biden, Kamala's boss.
The governor of Florida has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call.
Moving on, Kamala Harris continued her media tour. She was on the Howard Stern show as well as The View on ABC, where she was asked if she has any regrets or would do anything differently over the last 4 years in her work in the Biden administration.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
So, yes, she would not do anything differently. Even the botched Afghanistan pullout, apparently she's just fine with that. Speaking of Afghanistan, Nassar Ahmed Tawhidi, a 27-year-old, entered the United States just weeks after the botched pullout of American troops from Afghanistan. Well, he was just arrested by the Department of Justice and the FBI over his plans to carry out Election Day terror attacks in the United States. Tawhidi obtained firearms and ammunition in order to conduct a violent attack on U.S. soil, as well as taking a number of steps to prepare for the plot, according to authorities. He entered the United States on September 9th, 2021, just weeks after U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan. He was arrested this week and is charged with conspiring and attempting to provide material support to ISIS and receiving firearms to be used to commit a felony or a federal crime of terrorism. He appeared in Oklahoma federal court on Tuesday. Nevertheless, Kamala Harris said yesterday yesterday. Not even the botched Afghanistan pullout, which resulted in this would-be terror attack that was foiled by U.S. authorities. She says she doesn't have any regrets, even though she bragged about the role she played in that botched pullout. As I said, she was also on Howard Stern's satellite radio program yesterday, where Stern seemed to at least insinuate that Donald Trump is going to have his political opponents assassinated, completely oblivious to the fact that Donald Trump himself has survived 2 assassination attempts, and Kamala Harris plays right along.
What do you think, too, of these judges basically saying whatever Trump does in office is okay, including assassinating his opponents, because he's doing it for the good of the country? What the hell is going on here? You're the prosecutor. You're the attorney general. What is going on here? Is this America?
So to your point, that's where everyone, I think, is starting to understand this election is not 2016 or 2020, because that Supreme Court decision just a few months ago basically said to the former president, you will be immune from anything you do in office. Now, this is a guy who has said he'll be a dictator on day one, has said he would weaponize the Department of Justice, take away the independence of the Department of Justice.
Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was on the campaign trail in Michigan, and he had these words about the Trump-Vance administration's vision for the economy.
You know, gas prices are up 45% under Kamala Harris. That's just in Michigan. In Michigan, home prices are up 41%. I know we have a lot of parents and a lot of grandparents in this room. Speaking as the father of 3 young children, I would like my kids, when they grow up and move out, and hopefully that eventually happens, but when they grow up and they move out, I want them to be able to afford home ownership in the United States of America. That's a core part of the American dream, right? And we know a lot of our young people right now cannot afford to own a home in the United States of America. Kamala Harris has failed to deliver the basic necessities of an economic prosperity for our citizens. And I think that we ought to say something very simple to Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump's very fond of saying it. You're fired. Go back to San Francisco where you belong. We're getting a president the American people deserve.
The Colorado Supreme Court ruled Tuesday to dismiss a lawsuit brought by an attorney who's been harassing cake artist Jack Phillips, owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop, for more than 12 years. Alliance Defending Freedom attorneys have been defending Phillips since 2012, when he was first sued for declining to create a custom cake celebrating a so-called same-sex wedding because it violated his religious beliefs. Around that time, the attorney who filed the most recent lawsuit against Phillips first contacted him, calling him a hypocrite and a bigot. For more than 12 years now, Phillips has been relentlessly pursued and mocked by government officials and activists who disagree with his views. ADF senior counsel Jake Warner said, quote, "Enough is enough. Jack has been dragged through the courts for over a decade. It's time to leave him alone. Free speech is for everyone. As the U.S. Constitution held in 303 Creative, the government cannot force artists to express messages they don't believe. In this case, an attorney demanded that Jack create a custom cake that would celebrate and symbolize a transition from male to female. Because that cake admittedly expresses a message, and because Jack cannot express that message for anyone, the government cannot punish Jack for declining to express it. The First Amendment protects that decision." Phillips won his first case before the U.S. Supreme Court in 2018, when the court found that Colorado officials who punished Phillips acted with hostility towards his faith. That ruling did not address Phillips's free speech rights to decline to create custom cakes expressing messages that violate his faith. Now, the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling has ended the most recent lawsuit against Phillips, dismissing the case because the attorney who filed it did not follow the right process. Like the prior win, this ruling does not address Phillips's free speech rights. That's still a win for religious liberty as the Colorado Supreme Court comes to the aid of Jack Phillips. These courts are doing everything they possibly can, even in these small and minor victories, to not address the underlying thing at stake. Do you have a right of conscience when it comes to creative businesses or any business whatsoever? Can you refuse service to those who try to violate your conscience rights? Colorado Supreme Court, as well as other courts, even up to the Supreme Court, still trying to tiptoe and dance around that question. We now know U.S. hospitals charged nearly $120 million over 5 years for so-called sex change procedures, see that as meatball surgery in the name of gender, performed on around 14,000 children. That's according to new data compiled by medical watchdog group Do No Harm. The first of its kind database, which logs meatball surgery procedures given to children nationwide between 2019 and 2023, catalogs a total of 5,747 minors who underwent meatball surgery in the name of gender, along with 8,579 who obtained chemical castration drugs. Do No Harm believes the problem is likely even bigger than the data shows. The numbers, which are drawn from insurance claims data across all 50 states, do not include self-pay, charity payments, internal Veterans Affairs claims, or patients covered by Kaiser Health plans. To create its data set, the watchdog group matched gender-related diagnosis codes with codes for procedures related to so-called gender transitions, such as body modification surgeries and chemical castration drugs. Do No Harm chairman Dr. Stanley Goldfarb said during a press conference call that the database should dispel myths that these procedures are quote-unquote rare events or localized to just a few places. While the procedures are widespread across the U.S., Do No Harm's database highlights a dirty dozen of hospitals, exposing ones that have been the most vocal in their advocacy for offering so-called sex change procedures to minor. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia leads the list, followed by Connecticut Children's Medical Center, Children's Minnesota, Seattle Children's, and Children's Hospital Los Angeles. You can access this database for yourself, see which hospitals in your state have actually performed these heinous, wicked surgeries by going to donoharmmedicine.org. That's donoharmmedicine.org. And finally, this morning, Teamsters Union President Sean O'Brien went on Theo Vaughn's podcast and roasted the Democratic Party. This is filled with a lot of expletives that I have bleeped out. This is still rather jarring to hear. Again, this is Teamsters Union President Sean O'Brien.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a Democrat, but they have us over for the last 40 years, and for once, and not all of them, but for once, we're standing up as a union, probably the only one right now, saying, what the have you done for us?
Yeah.
And I'm getting attacked from the left, you know, and we've given, since I've been in office 2.5 years, we've given the Democratic machine $15.7 million. We've given Republicans about $340,000, truth be told. So it's like, you know, people say the Democratic Party is the party of the working people. They're bought and paid for by big tech, those big tech companies.
Yeah, tech is the new fossil fuel, man.
Right?
That's what I say.
Right. And you've got the Republicans who are now saying, hey, we want to be the working class party, right? And okay, you've got a great opportunity right now to do that. And the Democrats, if 60% of our members aren't supporting you, the system's broken. Yeah. And you need to fix it. Stop pointing fingers at Sean O'Brien. Stop pointing fingers at the Teamsters Union. Look in the mirror. I mean, I had a heated discussion 2 weeks ago with Chuck Schumer. And it got ugly.
Chuck Schumer is a piece of shit.
And it got ugly because, you know, these politicians, you know, the one thing I've learned, they walk in and they tell you, I did this for you. Okay, great. Let me tell you what you haven't done for us or our members. And we got into it pretty heavy. And I'm like, you had no problem taking $550,000 from me 3 weeks prior to me going on the Republican National Convention. And then you want to be a tough guy on Twitter or X or whatever it is and throw out there about me, like whatever.
And that's Teamsters Union President Sean O'Brien saying that he's been screwed by the Democrat Party for years. 40 years, he says. He still says that they've given $15.7 million in the last 2.5 years that he's been president. At some point, you got to wake up and smell the roses, dude. I mean, why are you continuing to give millions upon millions of dollars to a party that you say have been screwing you for the last 40 years? On the other hand, though, this could actually represent somewhat of a major realignment in American politics. If Republicans come through in this election and actually reward unions, not the ones that are extorting them, or at least extorting the country, but reward labor unions and actually befriend them, that could be a major shift in American politics in the years ahead. That'll do it for Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.